Hello, welcome to another episode of Thy Truth. There are red flags. There are things that you should not ignore, no matter how desperate, no matter how much you want to connect with someone, no matter how much you want to love and be loved. There are things that you need to just pause and reflect on. There are things that you should not at all in any way take for granted. If you love a bird, you love a boy, love a girl, whatever it is you are, just pause, because this could be a major mental downfall. It could lead to dominoes of wahala. I'm going to talk about them on this episode. Number one is lack of trust. Trust is very important. Without trust as a foundation in a relationship, it will pretty much go kapoosh. It will pretty much go down the drain. If you lack trust in a relationship, it's a sign that your relationship is going to be pretty much unstable. It's something that should not be ignored. And it's not just in relationships, like intimate relationships, even with friends, with colleagues, with family members. Trust is a major thing that is important in any sort of relationship. Any healthy relationship requires trust. Trust on both sides, not one-sided, on both sides. So that is something that should not be overlooked at all. Another thing that should not be overlooked is abuse. Any sort of abuse, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's mental abuse, these are signs that should not be ignored. Physical abuse is much more obvious because you can actually see it. We tend to neglect emotional abuse and mental abuse, which is just as bad or just as damaging in the long run. Everyone has their problems, everyone has issues they're going through, but you should not be a scapegoat for other people's wahala or problems. Abusing someone is never acceptable. It's never an acceptable response, rather, to a problem. It doesn't solve the problem. When you find out that you are in an abusive relationship, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, verbal, whatever it is, you should see this as a warning sign. This is something that should not be accepted at all. We've heard so many stories, and the recent one going on in Nigeria at the moment, in fact, there's so many recent ones, I can't even pick on them. A lot of physical abuse that have led to the death of a partner. It's just alarming, and it is something that we should take note of. And I know a lot of people have accepted it. A lot of people really go through emotional abuse and they just accept it as a norm. It is normal for them, for someone to treat them a particular way. No, it is not. These are signs that should be looked at before getting into a serious committed relationship. Another sign that should not be ignored is substance abuse, drug abuse. That is a major red flag. Any relationship that goes through substance abuse can turn into a toxic relationship, because most people with substance abuse kind of have the self-destructive habits that can lead to serious issues. If you are going through or struggling through substance abuse, or your partner is struggling through substance abuse, I think it's important to reach out and seek help. Should not be ignored in any sort of relationship. Another thing that should not be ignored is being with someone who has a narcissistic behavior. With someone who has a narcissistic personality, the world revolves around them, so it's all about them. If you're in a relationship with someone like that, it is really exhausting. It can be traumatizing as well, because it's all about them. Their needs come first. Their needs is all that matters, in fact. It is a sign you want to look at before you get into a relationship with them. Another sign that you should not ignore before you get into a relationship with someone, if they're constantly jealous. If you have feelings for someone, jealousy is a natural emotion, but it's how you react to the jealousy that matters. If they are constantly jealous of how you connect with other people or you being around other people, then that is something that should not be overlooked. If they put that jealousy feeling beyond what you share together as a couple or as partners, then it's something to be wary of. Another sign is being with someone who cannot resolve conflict, who carries a lot of pride and malice inside of them. They're uncomfortable with resolving wahala. They're uncomfortable with dealing with conflicts. When you're with someone who's unable to embrace constructive conflicts, then that is something to really, really look at, because it can lead to so many other wahalas down the lane. It could lead to resentment. It could lead to you feeling exhausted. You're tired of having to be the only one trying to resolve what's going on between you two. You're trying to work on a relationship and it feels like the other person isn't putting as much effort into it. Okay, another sign that one should take note of, a sign that is quite crucial in a relationship, it should not at all be ignored, is having someone who is codependent. If you are in a relationship where the person pretty much relies on you exclusively for emotional, physical, psychological support, it can be emotionally exhausting. It can be a lot of emotional work. So you want to be wary or be careful about being with someone who is very codependent on your relationship. Another sign you should not ignore is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a major sign not to ignore. It is when pretty much someone is manipulative, when someone tries to question or makes you question your sanity, question your judgment. You start to ask yourself, should I have done this? Maybe I'm the reason, maybe I'm the problem, maybe I'm the issue. If you find out that you are someone who gaslights, someone who makes you feel like you have a problem, gaslighting is a very common tactic of manipulation. At the end of the day, people who are gaslighted feel guilty about certain things that they should not feel guilty about. It is something, speaking from someone who's been gaslighted for years, I would tell you plain, it is not a feeling. It's not something I wish anyone go through. So be aware of this. Don't ignore these signs. Anyone who will make you look like you're the issue and they have no problem, like they are not their sense, and you're the one who makes them do things that they do to you, so you should be blamed, run. So these are signs you should not ignore. And lastly, someone who lacks emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is something not everyone is unfortunately gifted with. There are people who have very low emotional intelligence. They're not able to pick on feelings. They're not able to perceive emotions. They're not able to understand emotions. They're not able to manage emotions. They cannot empathize with you. At the end of the day, you have conflicts, you have issues, and they don't see it, they cannot manage it. They have no clue. If you're in a relationship with someone who lacks emotional intelligence, then it is something to really look at. It's something that you should not ignore. You're going through something and you cannot talk to them about it. They don't even know what you're going through. They just look at you and, okay, you're sad. What do I do? They cannot empathize. They cannot put themselves in your shoes. They have no clue. So someone who lacks emotional intelligence, don't ignore it. Okay, so these are some of the signs that you should not ignore. Quite a few signs you should be wary of, signs you should look out for. Do not take them for granted. Sometimes I feel like these signs are ignored out of ignorance, or sometimes we know these signs, but we just choose to ignore these warning signs. At the end of the day, they can affect us negatively one way or the other. Don't get me wrong, relationships are tough and you might see these signs, 1 or 2, 3 of them in your relationship. You might figure it out. You might get a grab or a hint of these signs. That doesn't mean the relationship is doomed. You can talk about it. There are red flags. There are warning signs of a possibly toxic relationship. My point is, don't ignore it. You can talk about it and communicate and see how you can work things out, but don't ignore it. And all of it, I wish you all the best, and thank you for listening.
Meet you again at another episode of Thytruth. Finding your truth with Efemena.